Now no longer on staff of Zion BP Church, but he is the advisory pastor. He is still a highly valued servant of the Lord. We were just catching up, and I'm sure the Lord will use him greatly this year. This is not the only time we will see him. We will see him a few times this year. But to kick off this journey, journeying through life together. Okay, so I will now pass the mic to Reverend Dr. David Wong, and then he will come and share with us.
Thank you, Pastor Leonard. The first thing I need is the clicker, so that thank you for coming. It's always good to come together after service. You have already heard a sermon, so I don't intend to give you another one. You've already been fed spiritually. Well, I'm glad to hear that QBC has got a mentoring culture. When I was first invited to kick off this series, I thought my first message would be to convince you that mentoring is something good and that you should get into it. But I was told you don't have to persuade our people because they're already persuaded, which is excellent. And I was just being briefed just now by Rebecca on what's been going on in your church. And I'm really impressed. I think there are not many churches in Singapore that is so intentional in promoting a mentoring culture. And in fact, you're already into mentoring. And most of you are already in a mentoring journey or in a mentoring process or mentoring relationship. So I assume that I'm speaking to the converted. But I'm told that there may be some here who are still not convinced. So I hope by the end of our time, you'll be convinced that you are either a mentor or mentee. You have to be in a mentoring relationship to really benefit in your spiritual growth. So, I like the title you have given to this series, Journeying Through Life Together. Life is a journey. Each one of us has to make the journey, but we don't have to do it alone. We can do it together. But you know, a journey has a destination, and a journey also has a direction. So let me begin with a story of the foolish jester. There was once a jester who served for many years in the king's palace, amusing the king, entertaining the king. And then one day he came to the king and said, I've been here so long, I think I should make a move. I would like a change. I'd like to go somewhere else. The king said, I'm so sorry to lose you. And by the way, where are you going? And the jester said, well, I don't know. I just want to go, but I do not know where I'm going. So the king took a ring off his finger, and he said, may I put this ring on your finger? Because you are the biggest fool I know. How can someone begin a journey and not know where he goes? Wear this ring until you find a fool that is bigger than you, and then you can give the ring to him. Well, the jester left, and for many years, he was away from the kingdom. And then one day, he heard news that the king was very ill. He rushed back to the kingdom to find the king on his deathbed. And he told the king, I'm glad I'm back here. At least I can say my words of farewell to you. And by the way, do you know where you're going? And the king said, yeah, I'm embarking on a journey after this, but I really don't know where I'm going. So the jester took the ring off his finger and he said, I have at last found a fool that is bigger than me. Okay. I think there's a great lesson to learn from this story, and that is, a journey has to have a destination. We need to know where we are going. So the challenge for us as believers in Christ and followers of Christ is, do we know where we are going? If life is a journey, what is our destination? And if we are if we know our destination and we want to be moving towards our destination and eventually get there, we need to know how to get there. We need to have direction. We need to be moving in the right direction so that with time we are closer and closer to our destination. Because if you are heading in the wrong direction, you can be making a lot of progress, but you'll be getting farther and farther away from your destination. Okay? So in life journey, the most important thing is moving in the right direction, knowing where you are heading. So if we ask the question as Jesus' disciples, as God's people, what is our destination? I know what's the word that comes to your mind. You will say heaven, isn't it? Right? Many of us, correct answer, if people ask you, what is your final destination? We will say it's heaven. But you know, heaven is a place. And I've often thought about, heaven as a destination, whether it is really a correct answer. Because you know that for us, a place is not as important as a person. Jesus said, I am the way. He did not say, let me show you the way. Eventually, the destination is not so much a place as a person. Our destination is where we will meet Jesus. We will meet Jesus face to face. And so we are told when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming. Because this is a reference to Jesus' second coming. When he comes, we will be confident before him. When we meet him, we will not be ashamed. But if he doesn't come in our lifetime, we will go to him. Right? Either he comes for us or we go to him. So when I was a younger person, I was always looking forward to the coming of Jesus. Now that I'm an older person, I'm now looking forward to the going to Jesus. We call it home going home. I turned 70 last year, and both my parents went home to the Lord in their early 70s. So I don't know if I follow according to their DNA, their longevity. I'm looking forward now to going to Jesus. But whether it is Jesus coming for us or we going to Jesus, that is our final destination. That's our final destiny where we will see Jesus face to face. Okay? So the question is whether we will meet him with confidence or with shame. Now, to me, that is our destination. We meet Jesus face to face. Either we will be confident in seeing him or be ashamed. I've been a teacher, a lecturer, a trainer. And when you meet students who have not done their homework or have not submitted their assignments, they're not very keen to meet you. You walk down the corridor, they see you, they quickly siam. Okay, and when they sit in the class, they sit at the back because they are ashamed to meet you because they've not done what they're supposed to do. So this is a serious thought. Now, we never know when that destination will be, when that rendezvous will be, that meeting will be. So the question is whether we are confident in seeing Jesus, joyful in seeing him, or we are regretful and ashamed. What about direction? I think of this verse in Ephesians 4:15, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Christ. So we want to meet Jesus, mature in him. That's what Paul is always praying for his converts and his flock, that they will grow in maturity. So the other question that we have to really answer is whether we are moving in the right direction when it comes to growing in maturity. Now, some people have this illusion that the older they get, the wiser they become. But you know, time does nothing to maturity, you know. You don't become more mature as you grow older. No. You just grow older. But it doesn't mean that you grow more mature. I mean, I'd like to give the example of Joseph and his brothers. I mean, if you read Genesis from 37 to 50, you find that Joseph grew in maturity. By the time you get to, I mean, when we started in Genesis 37, he was an immature, boastful kid, 17 years old. But by the time you get to the end of his life, at the end of the Genesis, you find that he had become so mature that he doesn't need to take revenge now. And the way he spoke about God, the way he spoke about forgiveness. But if you look at the brothers are the same. No? In Genesis 37, they were afraid of him because they were resentful towards him because he was a favorite son. And then in chapter 50, after so many years, they were still afraid of Joseph because now he is the Pharaoh's right-hand man. And sometimes when I meet people that I have not seen for a long time, my question is, 10 years have passed, 20 years have passed, 30 years have passed, 40 years have passed. How have you grown? And unfortunately, there's some people who, after many years, you find that they are still like what they were in the past. They're still talking about the same thing. They're still griping about the same thing. They have not moved on in maturity. So let me leave these two thoughts with you, destination and direction. So when we talk about mentoring journey, these are the two main concerns. Now, how will it be when we see Jesus face to face at the end of the journey? And while we are here on earth, and while we can, are we growing towards maturity? Just one more thought for you to think about. A long time ago, when my wife was pregnant with our first child, first daughter, when we saw the doctor, the gynecologist, he told us, these 9 months are crucial. These 9 months are crucial. In terms of the mother's health, in terms of understanding all the signs and symptoms of how the child behaves in the womb. He said eventually the child will be born. But what happens during these 9 months will determine the health of the child. That really got me thinking. No? Now, to me, the birth of a child is like eventually when we get to heaven. No? And that 9 months in the womb is like when we're here on earth, right? And what happened during these 9 months of gestation, that mentoring journey is important because what you will become when you finally land up in heaven depends on what you do now. Okay, so I hope I got you thinking about this seriously. Journeying with Jesus. Just very quickly, when I was looking at the way Jesus mentored the disciples, I come to an interesting conclusion. One, he chose a few among the many. He ministered to hundreds, thousands of people, but he chose 12. Okay? And even though he ministered to the masses, to the many, he was always paying attention to the 12 disciples. If you have a chance, you want to do some research, you can take one of the Gospels, read through, and mark those places where he's talking to the disciples and when he's talking to the masses. And you'll find quite interesting. How many verses would be when he's talking to the crowds, and how many would be when he's talking to the 12 disciples? You may find the result quite interesting. Also, when he was the disciples, he was always reminding them that he will not be for them for long. In fact, of the 3 years, by the time he reaches the second year, almost the third year, he was beginning to talk about his death. And basically, he would tell them, look, I'm not going to be with you forever, so learn to take care of yourself. That's very different from the way we parent our children here in Singapore. You heard of the term helicopter parents. Recently, I've been talking with a number of young people. I'm trying to reach out to the younger generation. And one of the things that they tell me is, our parents are too controlling. They want to know everything that's happening in my life, and they want to control everything I do. And the moment they go abroad to studies, where they're away from parents, it's like breaking out of prison. They will do everything they're not allowed to do while they're here. So just a note for parents. When Jesus was disciples, he was always telling them, I'm not going to be with you for long, so learn to take care of yourself. Okay, learn while you can. Okay? So what he did was he always encouraged them to have initiative. He always get them involved in what he was doing. And I want to do a very quick exercise with you. I know we don't have very much time. I just want you to look at 3 miracles of Jesus. And what I'm going to do is divide this group into 3. So on this side, on the right-hand side, what I would like you to do is look at these 3 passages. So this side, maybe you can look at John chapter 1, just 11 verses. Just read it. And those who are in the middle, you can look at John 11, 38 to 44. Just read it. And then those who are on this side, you got the longest passage. Actually, not very long. 14 verses. Okay, not very long. I reduced it. So the feeding of 5,000, those of you can look at it. The raising of Lazarus from the dead, and then turning water into wine. Just take a couple of minutes to read through that. And then I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Okay, are you ready? So let's start with this group, John chapter 2, the turning of water into wine. In that miracle, what did Jesus do and what did the people do? First of all, maybe what did Jesus ask the people to do? Come. Okay, fill the jars with water. Anything else? And draw whatever is in and serve. Okay, 2 things, right? Fill the jars with water. After that, take it out and go and serve to the guest. What did Jesus do? Say it again. He turned the water into wine. And that's the simple answer, isn't it? Okay, let's look at the second miracle. The raising of Lazarus from the dead. What did Jesus ask the people to do? Roll away the stone. Okay. And then what else did he ask him to do? Remove the grave clothes. Okay, 2 things. All right. The feeding of the 5,000. What did Jesus ask the disciples to do? I'm going to look for something. Okay, and they found the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Then after that, what did they ask the disciples to do? Pick up the leftover. Oh, that's at the end. He asked the disciples to get the people seated in family groups. Okay, and then what else asked them to do? Distribute the loaves and the fishes. And then finally asked them to collect the leftovers. Okay. What did Jesus do? He gave thanks and he multiplied the loaves and the fishes. Okay. Do you see a pattern in the way Jesus performed these miracles? What is the pattern? What he asked the people to do and what he himself did. So in the turning of the water wine, he didn't fill the jar of water. Not because he's lazy to do it, but it was something which the people could do. Neither did he take whatever he has done from water into wine to serve the people. He asked the people to do it. Of course, that's not his job. The server is supposed to serve the people. Now, the raising of Lazarus, he could easily have moved the stone. No? In fact, it would be a more spectacular miracle if he had commanded the stone to move and commanded the grave clothes to fall to the ground. But he didn't. In fact, the feeding of the 5,000, it would be a spectacular miracle if the bread and the fishes could fly into the sky and drop on the laps of all the people. And then when they finished eating, all the leftover fly in the sky and finally came onto a heap. It would have been a more fantastic miracle, but he didn't. So it's very simple. When the disciples are journeying with Jesus, one thing they learned is Jesus did what the disciples could not do. And what the disciples did was what they could do. And including the people around him. So our conclusion is Jesus would only do what he himself could do and no one else could do. Now, in the mentoring process, what we are trying to do is we are trying to get people to do what they can do. So we don't do what they can do for them. So I like this quote from a book written by a lady. Her name is Mary Kate Moses, Making Room for Leadership. And this is what he said about Jesus and the disciples. Jesus never acted small. He wasn't a shadow in the background. On the other hand, Jesus never acted big, like a sponge soaking up lots of social space. Instead, he embedded his presence and power in his followers so that they might thrive. Now, to me, that's how Jesus mentored the disciples. That's how he trained the disciples. He basically passed on his power and his presence to them. Now, that's one of the most challenging things to do in a mentoring process. Now, how do you empower the people you are mentoring so that what is given to you is passed on to them? Now, think about that. Now, I understand that most of you are already in the mentoring relationship. What I would like to hear from you is, in your experience, tell me one thing that has been helpful for you. Okay? Tell me one thing that's been helpful for you in the mentoring journey or in the mentoring process. And one thing that you find that has not been helpful. Can you think about that? When I was a senior pastor of my church, we always talk about this. What have we done well and what could we do better? No. So what has gone on well in the mentoring culture here in QBC? What has gone on well in your own experience, in your mentoring relationship? And what do you think could be better? Would someone like to tell us? I think it will be great encouragement to your leaders if you tell them what has been going on well in your experience. We've got a mic for you. You want to say something about your experience. I need to understand where you're coming from before I tell you where I'm coming from. Okay. Anyone? You see, they're so used to sitting in the church service and listening to the pastor. One time I spoke in a church, and I asked a question, and I got people to answer from the audience. No? And later on, the pastor said, "Hey, don't do this. We don't, in the church, we preach to them. We don't let them preach to us." No? It's okay. This is not a service. This is a seminar, so you can say. Anyone? So Leonard, nobody is going to say, so maybe you can say on their behalf. Okay, give Pastor Leonard the mic. No.
I think what is helpful is learning from the experience of those that have gone before.
Okay.
And there's wisdom in that. And if God can see the person through, God can see you through.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's encouraging. What we can do better. I've always appreciated mentors who gives you suggestion instead of dictate to you what you should do.
Okay. All right. So there's always a temptation for us as mentors to tell people what to do. As we have seen from Jesus' experience, he only let people do what they can do. And he only does what people cannot do. Okay? All right, let me take the last 50 minutes to share with you from a study which I did when I was doing training with Haggai Institute. We were training leaders from all over the world, and my main concern was, how can we train these people so that their lives are changed? Sometimes we are in a situation where we are learning, but actually nothing is happening to us. So let me share with you what it means to journey together. How can we mentor someone so that we encourage initiative and involvement? And how can we mentor someone so that he or she goes on to mentor others? So we want to have a mentoring culture where we are multiplying mentors. And by multiplying mentors, we are multiplying also mentees. I've been thinking about learning. The disciples learning from Jesus. They were in a journey literally as well as figuratively. Literally, they were traveling with Jesus from the Sea of Galilee all the way over 3 years to Jerusalem. So for them, everything ended in Jerusalem with the crucifixion of Jesus. But figuratively, they were also learning as they were traveling with Jesus. I would say on the way and by the way. If you read the Gospels, you find that many of the lessons that Jesus taught the disciples actually arose from things that were happening as they were traveling. Maybe as they're traveling, they see a fig tree. Jesus cursed the fig tree. Then the disciples say, what's this about? Then he tells them what it means. On the way, he meets some people, and then he talks to them. He tells them a parable, and the disciples said, no, we don't understand this parable you're telling them. Can you explain to us? No, it's all on the way. Then he meets someone who touched a garment and touched the edge of a garment, got healed. And Jesus asked, who touched me? And the disciples, so many people are touching you. Why say, who touched you? Then Jesus began to teach them through all this, like you say, experiences. Unfortunately, today, the way we learn is quite different. In those days, learning was experiential. You learn through experience. Learning was catalytic. It was not just one person teaching a person, but there was a lot of interaction between them. And learning was very relational. Today what has happened, when I look at things more closely, is that our learning has become quite virtual. So it's not real life experience, all in virtual reality. And I don't know how that's going to affect the way we learn, or the way we think we learn, but don't actually learn. A lot of learning is very didactic, one way. We go to a seminar, we go to a meeting, we go to a conference and listen to speakers. And then my biggest concern now with learning is that it's become very individualistic, mainly because of this little device. This device has really made us individualistic because we relate with this device on our own. The screen is so small that not two or three persons can look at it at the same time, unlike a television. I thought with a television, there's some loss of community, but at least people just sit together and watch the same thing. But this one, usually just you. So let me say a bit about experiential learning. In the mentoring journey, learning is from experience, on ground level, day-to-day experiences, what we call gut or visceral learning. Not just conceptual, not just cerebral. When I was with Haggai Institute, I have a colleague who is from Argentina. He's a Latino. I don't know whether you have friends who are from Latin America, but they are very gut people. Now, one day he walked in my office and he said, "David, I don't understand you Chinese." I look at the face, I don't know whether you're happy or sad. Whether you're angry with me or happy with me. He said, "We Latinos, when we are angry, we show it." And I watch his teaching, the same thing. And that's a lot from his guts. And he engages the people. Sometimes he's quite violent. He will take something and throw on the floor and break it. He said, "It's okay, I'll pay for it if it costs something." But learning from real-life experiences is something that will really stick with you. So it means that in a mentoring learning process, they need for you to come out and said, "I experienced this, and that's how I feel about it." In other words, don't try to quote it and say, "Well, I went through this experience, but by the grace of God, I was able to control my temper," and so on. But before you control temper, you're actually boiling hot. Come up with it. Describe your life's experiences as they really happen. Don't try to give it a spiritual quoting. One of my greatest disappointment in my ministry was one time a pastor asked to meet up with me. And I thought, well, good, now we can learn from each other. But every time we meet, we are talking about all the theology and abstract things. And I didn't realize that he was having a lot of issue with his wife. And then one day he announced in the church that he was divorcing his wife. And then we asked him, "Have you served divorce papers on your wife?" He said, "Yes." "When did you serve it?" And he gave the date. And I found out the same day that I met him for lunch. I met him for lunch. After lunch, he went to serve divorce papers on the wife. But during lunch, we were talking about all the wonderful things, about the Bible, about theology. Then I realized that in our relationship, we never shared from our personal experiences now. We are always talking about things outside of us. Our learning was not experiential. It was all our head learning. The other thing we need to do about learning is it needs to be catalytic. Catalytic means I have a relationship with you, tell me something, I tell you something, and then together we put the two things together and something comes out of it. Now the sum of the two is greater, the result is greater than the sum of the two. Some people are afraid to mentor others because they said, I'm not really very mature, I do not know a lot. But actually, the mentoring relationship is not you who is teaching the other person. You are also learning from the person. So when I was directing the training institute in Hawaii, many of our facilitators come from different parts of the world to teach. They come with a lot of expertise. They come with a lot of zeal and eagerness to teach. But what we tell them when they come is, you have not come to teach. And that always surprised them. They say, "What do you mean I've not come to teach? I've carved out quite a bit of time to come here to teach." We say, "No, you have not come to teach." They, pointing to those people, they have come to the seminar, I said, they have come to learn. You see a difference? If your attitude is, "I've come to teach," then your focus is on what you're going to give. But if your attitude is, "My mentee has come to meet me to learn, and I have also come to learn with him," then the whole experience becomes a catalytic learning experience. Are you following me? No. So if you are a mentor in a mentoring relation, doesn't mean that you are the one who is going to be on top, passing everything to the one below. So it's not top-down. It's not one way. It's two ways. And I hope that gives you some comfort and assurance. I was involved in a one-year mentoring relationship with 4 SBC alumni. Now, we met for a year 10 times, once a month. And as I look back on that 1 year, I think I learned as much from them as they did from me. As I listened to their stories, as I listened to their struggles, and as I tried to understand also my own struggle in the light of what they were going through, I came to understand myself much better as I was trying to help them understand themselves. Okay? And finally, and this is something which I cannot emphasize enough, learning is relational. We are all product of the Western civilization because of English. I don't know whether you realize how much studying the English language has affected the way we think. You see, Western civilization comes from the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire. And to the Greeks, learning is basically getting something like a commodity out of the earth. It's like mining iron or mining gold. It's a mechanical process. You study, you research, and then you get something. But the Jews or the Hebrews, they have quite a different concept from the Greeks. Their concept is learning is always from a person, never from a thing. And knowledge is not a commodity. Knowledge is a person. That's why I read the book of Proverbs. Wisdom is a woman crying in the street, calling out, standing in the street corner, calling people, come and learn wisdom from me. I'm going to give you a very simple example. Let's say one day I meet somebody who says, I want to learn how to cook Cantonese dishes. Okay? I want to learn how to cook Cantonese dishes. I can go to my library and pull out a book that says Cantonese cuisine, and I can give it to the person and say, read this book. Or else I can say, come and meet my wife. My wife is Cantonese and she's a fantastic cook. You get to know her and you learn from her. You see the difference? One learning is relational. You build a relationship. The other is from book. Now, together with our world becoming more and more virtual is the fact that we're now learning more from things than from persons. How do people learn today? They go to YouTube, right? YouTube can tell you anything you want to know. One time somebody brought a bottle of wine to our home for dinner. Because my wife and I, we don't drink wine, we don't have the thing to open the bottle. They said, no problem, let's check YouTube. And sure enough, you go to YouTube, they tell you how to open a wine bottle without using the traditional. Do you know they can open a wine bottle with a shoe? Yeah, you put the wine bottle into the shoe and you shake it and it will come out. It's amazing how much you can learn from YouTube, no? But the kind of learning has no relationship. No, you're learning from something that is virtual. But that's how we are learning things now. No relationship. But you can learn how to do things, YouTube, but I don't think you can learn spiritual stuff from YouTube. People are now listening to sermons on YouTube, all the great sermons, but no relationship. They listen to a speaker that they have never met, they do not know. So let me say this again, that the mentoring journey is a relational journey. You build relationship with someone. And eventually what you learn is learned from the person. It's not learned from something. We have a testimony of a young man in our church. He grew up in the church, and he was coming to church because his parents wanted him to come to church. And then when I was 16 or 17, he came out with a strategy. He said, I am going to leave the church, and I'm going to leave the church in a way that will not hurt my parents. So he planned that when he reaches 18 and gets to national service, he will use that excuse to tell the parents not come to church anymore. No, she needs a weekend to rest. She planned everything for 2 years. Now from the time 16, planned for 2 years. And when he was 18, he implemented the plan. He stopped coming to church. But then something brought him back to the church. And in his testimony, he said, while I didn't want to hurt my parents by not going to church, there's someone in the church that has been showing interest. He was a Sunday school teacher for many years, and after teaching him for all those years, he became the leader of his cell group. And while he was doing his studies, this gentleman was always showing interest, calling him, finding out how he was. You see, he left the church for some months, but he thought of this person in the church who was invested so much in him. He said, how can I disappoint him? And eventually he came back to church because of the mentor, not because of the parents. That's the power of relationship. That's a power of relationship. So I'll leave that with you. My time is up. And as you said, we are supposed to start on time and end on time. But I just want to mention a book which I wrote, which just came out a few months ago. This is the second print. It was sold out within a month. When I was reaching 70, about 2 years ago, I asked myself a question: what makes me who I am today, and what makes me what I am today? And I found that actually the people who made me who I am today are mostly authors of books. Some I've met personally, I know personally, and some I've never met in my life. And some have been dead for many years. And most of them are going to die within the next few years because they are quite elderly. So there are people like John Stott, Eugene Peterson, George Burwell, John Haggai, John Sung, or even Augustine. So if you're interested, you can let me know. I'm going to come back the next time. Maybe I was hoping to bring the books today, but my wife is not coming, and if my wife is not here, she will never be able to sell. I will never be able to sell these books. She's the one who sells. So maybe the next time I come, bring my wife and make this book available for you. It's called The Owl and the Fellowship of the Wise. The Owl is me, and the Fellowship of the Wise are all the people who mentored me over the last 50 or so years of my Christian life. Let's pray. Father, there's so much for us to learn and so much for us to teach one another. And we want to pray that you will help us in our life's journey to be heading in the right direction, to be growing in maturity, to know you more and more, and to become more and more like Christ. Because our final destination is the time where we will see Jesus. Either he coming for us or we going to him. And we want to meet him with joy, with confidence, and not with shame. So we pray that you'll bless all the mentoring relationships we have in QBC, all that is going on, both in the one-on-one relationship and those that are in group mentoring, that we will learn from the sharing of experiences, we will learn from one another, and as we learn, we will also build relationship, because that's where learning becomes most effective and most lasting. So help us, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.